BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the TeeSpring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. This episode of Black Box Online Radio is brought to you by Rep Sports and Raze Energy. Are you a fan of energy drinks, protein shakes, and health foods? Well, I sure am. I use the stuff almost every single day. They sell Raze Energy products at my local gym, but you can have them shipped to your home. Use the coupon code NED075, that's NED075, for discounts applied at the checkout. The link is in the description box. Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this special bonus episode of Black Box Online Radio. And I'm going to be talking all about the murder of Missy Bevers from Midlothian, Texas, which occurred back in 2016. But before I begin, I would like to inform anyone who has by chance clicked on this episode for the first time that every Monday I do a segment here on this channel called Zodiac Mondays about the Zodiac Killer, and on Wednesdays recently I've been doing one about the Long Island serial killer. So if you're curious about any of these true crime cases and you want to follow along with these discussions, I would invite you to like and subscribe to the channel so you can join in, share anything you want in the comments section down below. If you have any ideas or suggestions for a future episode, I also do something called the Anything Goes segment on Friday, where I talk about absolutely any subject under the sun or in the darkness. No subject is off limits, so I welcome you to respond. But today, I would first like to say a big rest in peace to Missy Bevers, and she became the subject of many internet discussions and pieces of news coverage because she lost her life in April of 2016, and I have to give a shout out to YouTube user Ghost Gaming, who says, "Ned, I know you have covered the Missy Bevers case, but tomorrow is the anniversary, and I think an insight from you would be welcomed, because I'm really struggling as to whether it was targeted or burglary. It troubles me that this remains unsolved." Well, thank you, Ghost Gaming, for the recommendation. And the anniversary of Missy Bevers' passing was actually yesterday, April 18th of 2016, and it is very hard to believe that it has been 6 years. Another day and another year has gone by, and still there has not been an arrest made, as well as a conviction and any sort of legal proceedings, and people are still having very large debates. Before I talk about the specifics of the case, I would just like to share a note of optimism, and that is that many true crime cases seemed impossible to solve, yet we have had answers recently. For example, in this year, 2022, Brandon Lawson was found in Texas, heading from San Angelo toward Abilene, Texas, who disappeared in 2013. His remains were discovered, and that solved one of the mysteries that sleuths were just banging their heads against the wall trying to figure out. And more or less, it seems like answers have been found. And also, the Golden State Killer mystery was solved in the past couple years. One of the more prolific serial killers of the 20th century was identified as Joseph D'Angelo, and just recently the I-65 killer who operated in the Kentucky and Indiana area was identified as Harry Greenwell. So lots of true crime discoveries have been happening, as well as part of the legal procedures are taking place. The Sherry Papini kidnapping story was determined to have been a hoax, and she is now in the courtroom about that. And one of the lesser-known cases on the channel that I was talking about, the murder of Dwayne Simmons reached its conclusion at the trial, and Francisco Mendez was convicted for murdering Dwayne Simmons and shooting the NFL cornerback Corey Ballentine. So I simply wanted to point out that a lot is changing in the world of forensic science and investigations, and some of the cases that I was talking about, the Golden State Killer mystery and the I-65 killer, they used familial and genealogical DNA tracings, but with the murder of Dwayne Simmons, they simply found the perpetrator by investigating, and they spent about a month tracking him down and locating and identifying Francisco Alejandro Mendez. And with the disappearance of Brandon Lawson, it was just a lot of connections were not made, and he was found on a property which wasn't owned. Or sorry, it was owned by people who did not live there. They only frequently went to the property, not even super frequently. So, because they weren't there, they were difficult to get in touch with and to get permission and authorization. And not only that, they had very large amounts of territory to cover to locate his remains. So, there are possibilities. The answers exist, and they might very well be able to track down, but I do want to get back to the actual details of the Missy Bevers case. On April 18th of 2016, Terry Leanne Bevers was murdered. She was commonly known as Missy. She was a personal trainer who was setting up a fitness boot camp, frequently referred to as the Gladiator Boot Camp, at a church in Midlothian, Texas. Prior to her murder, before Missy had even arrived in the church, somebody was waiting there. Someone who had been walking up and down the halls wearing police gear, or what appeared to be police gear, and they had a very unusual gait, a very unusual walking style. Their toes were pointed almost completely outward, and also they seemed to be wobbling a little bit, and in one frame someone swears that they can see some type of reflection, like the person may be wearing a prosthetic leg, and those are the real debates that people were having in the true crime world. Was this a man in the costume? Was it a woman in the costume? Was this a person who was wearing oversized shoes to disguise their appearance? Did this person have prosthetic legs? And was this an actual member of law enforcement? But you heard the in the requested topic/question about, is this someone who was there to rob the church or burglarize it? Or was this someone who was specifically targeting Missy Bevers? And the robbery theory is that when you see that person walking up and down the hallway, he or she was not waiting for Missy to arrive to murder her. Instead, this person was looking for a very specific room that had a very specific item. But some people simply think that this person was walking around the church because he or she was bored and he was waiting for the victim to show up. The victim was pre-planned, pre-chosen. She was targeted, selected. They knew that Missy Bevers was going to be at the fitness boot camp because of the announcement that she had made on Facebook. I believe there was some type of weather issue, and that she was talking about how the Gladiator boot camp was going to be moved, and this person would have known, or would have had very ease of access to know that Missy would have been at the church at a certain time. And what they were actually doing was they were trying to locate any type of security system or video camera system. But I would like to go to an article from 2022, because this is the update for this year, and this one is written by Rick Malk. 6 years later, they lead the search for Missy Bevers, and it's talking about the True Crime Boards podcast. Almost 6 years ago, Terry Bevers, who went by the nickname Missy, was murdered. Her killer has not yet been found, but Renee Rodden and Crystal Lawson continue to look for the person who took Missy's life on April 18th of 2016. Their podcast, True Crime Boards, which they started on February 15th of 2020, has a focus on bringing that person to justice. The main purpose of the podcast was to keep Missy's story alive and keep the public aware of what is going on with the case. Also, we want to remind everyone to call in tips, Rodden said. That's what made us start a GoFundMe for a billboard, which is currently up in Waxahachie, Missy Bevers was 45 years old and a mother of 3 from Red Oak. She was an active member of the community, and she had no known enemies. Well, I'm not even 100% sure about that, but a fitness buff who taught her own classes, she arrived at Midlothian's Creekside Church of Christ just after 4 a.m. to prepare for her early morning gladiator boot camp fitness class. About an hour later, she was found by her students, who quickly called emergency services. She had a head injury and multiple puncture wounds to her chest and was unresponsive. When she was discovered, she died shortly after the paramedics arrived, and the investigation into her murder began immediately. Okay, though, there are a couple of points here. The first is that Missy arrived just after 4 a.m., but they believe that the perpetrator was there at least 30 minutes earlier, the person who's walking around in that police gear. So it's quite possible that that person was waiting for Missy, or he said there's that other possibility that they were there to burglarize the church, or maybe to steal something very particular. When I say burglarize, I almost only think about money and valuables, but that person is being very slow and very gentle. Maybe they just thought they wouldn't be interrupted. But this article continues. Video from Creekside Church. Chilling video footage from the church appears to show a person carrying what appears to be a hammer while opening and closing various rooms around the building. At one point, they broke open a door with a hammer. The person's clothing included a helmet, gloves, and shin guards. They also wore a vest emblazoned with the word police. Okay, now, for a long time, people were saying that Missy was murdered by the hammer, murdered with the hammer, or with a crowbar. You even had Nancy Grace on television saying that they had this information from somewhere that she was murdered with what appeared to be the end of the hammer, and that's why they were saying that there were puncture wounds that killed her, that she died as a result of puncture wounds. If she had been stabbed with a knife, they would have called them stabbed wounds, but that was all disinfo. I still get some questions to this day on old Missy Bevers episodes about people saying something about, was she stabbed, or was she hit with the hammer, was she hit with a crowbar? And Missy Bevers reportedly died of a gunshot wound, and I'll talk a little bit more about Tim Koval in just a second, but I questioned him about that directly because somebody had written into the comment section here on BBOR saying that Missy Bevers was shot with her own concealed carry, and they had this theory that Missy Bevers was carrying a gun, and she got into an altercation with the person in the police outfit, and that person took her gun and killed her. Well, it appears that Missy Bevers was indeed shot, but her gun, Missy had a concealed carry that was still in her vehicle at the time, so she didn't have that present with her. That suggests as well that this person in the police costume was carrying their own firearm, but I want to repeat that very clearly. Missy Bevers was killed by a gunshot wound, and I'm not sure if that was just the media went with the story, or maybe the police actually shared some disinformation, or misinformation rather. But there are cases of disinfo. Sometimes law enforcement does not want to reveal the entire story. They want to put the killer in a false sense of ease, or they just simply don't want the general public knowing everything. They have privileged pieces of information, and who truly knows what the media does? All right, back to this article here from Focus Daily News. Rodden knew Bevers from when they were working at the Vault Denim plant. Having met in 2013, they worked together for a little over a year. Lawson did not know Bevers, but they had mutual friends. Then she met Rodden in a group discussing the murder. Renee and I had met in a Facebook discussion group, and we realized that we had years of research that others might be interested in. We had talked on the phone by messenger often, and we were keeping the case in the forefront. And a big thank you to them for discussing the murder of Missy Bevers and just trying to help bring some understanding, media awareness, and just connecting with people who are curious about this. As I said, for the longest time, there was that piece of misinformation going around about how she was struck with a hammer or a crowbar, and it was actually a gun that led to her death. But also, a big thank you to Tim Koval of Gumshoe Stories. He has a YouTube channel out as well as a website. He has shared a lot about the murder of Missy Bevers and looks at the case inside and out. He's also contributed thanks for this channel, Black Box Online Radio, And, of course, thank you to Aaron Stoner, who shared the possible composite sketch of an alleged, I repeat, alleged perpetrator. And John Lorden did numerous episodes on Missy Bevers. Stephanie Harlow also covered Missy Bevers, and they were contributing to a lot of the discussions. And I did learn about Missy Bevers from John Lorden's channel, and I was very curious about this case when I first started doing episodes of Black Box Online Radio about true crime. And I did a 4-part series called Missy Bevers' Hitman Theory, and I was exploring the possibility of, was somebody given money to murder Missy Bevers? The reasons why I thought this was the ways that someone went to disguise their appearance seemed like this wasn't someone's first day on the criminal job, that someone had at least the smallest amount of familiarity with how they should put on a costume that wouldn't startle someone immediately. Like, say, for example, if someone saw someone in a police outfit, that would be quite different than if someone saw someone in a ski mask or in a trench coat and, I don't know, some, like, big loose boots with laces flopping about. So I began to think that, is there any possibility that somebody wanted Missy Bevers dead, but they didn't commit the crime themselves? They instead had somebody else do it. And somebody provided the challenge to me about that. Well, the problem with this whole hitman theory is that there would be some type of paper trail. There would be evidence. There would be phone calls and internet conversations. And, well, I don't think that that is true. Something like this could definitely take place without those things happening. There are things like burner phones, or a lot of these planned hit jobs are done with secluded meetings, so there's no electronic communication of any kind. But I have to confess, I definitely regret saying things numerous times in the Missy Bevers episodes called Hitman Theory on this channel, the 4-part series. I regret saying that she would have been murdered by a trained professional. What kind of training would someone really have to be a hitman? I mean, and this person, I don't really think that, and I shouldn't have ever said that on the channel because there's way too much guesswork involved with that. But the possibility that somebody was given money to take out Missy Bevers as opposed to having someone go after her themselves, that still stays with me, and I do get curious about it, and it is an unsolved case, so that is where we are now. But also, I do need to point out, over the debate on whether or not this is a man or a woman in the costume, my immediate first instinct was, this is a man. Like, I was shocked that people were even saying that it was a woman in the costume, and I'm not using any type of forensic analysis or anything. When I first saw that video of the person walking, I was like, absolutely, that's a man. But if anybody would like to weigh in the comments section down below, feel free to do so. The next article is from the Dallas Morning News, and this one was written by Tom Steele. 6 years after Missy Bevers was killed inside a Midlothian church, police say their investigation remains open and they are determined to see this case reach closure. Authorities have received more than 3,000 tips since the Bevers slaying, with more coming in almost daily. And investigators have traveled across Texas and to other states to follow up on new leads, the Midlothian police say. Although the homicide remains unsolved and no arrests have been made, police reiterated that they do not consider it a cold case. And if I can throw in an interjection there, if I have to give you my honest opinion, I do not believe that this will be a cold case forever, like some of the ones out there, sadly, but some cases do remain cold. Instead, I think there will be closure at some point, and some way answers will come out. Now, I don't know if there will be something like a conviction, but I think we will get some answers. And this one also says that Missy Bevers was a mother of 3 from Red Oak, and she died from puncture wounds to her head and chest. Well, as I said, that's another piece of disinfo that's been going out for, let's see, well over 5 years from the time that article was published. No, she was not killed by puncture wounds. I mean, to the best of my knowledge, she was shot with a gun. And some other info that has come out in the recent year, the last year rather, was that from an article that came to us from CW33.com, and it says, Theo Acker, host of the Thing Theo podcast, had an in-depth discussion with Missy Bevers' husband, Brandon Bevers. She joined the show to talk about the exclusive conversation, and I believe that that's referring to another
participant on the show, Brandon Bevers, of course, Missy's husband, and he was one of the first people. Actually, he was the first person I ever heard who said that he thought that the helmet that was worn by the perpetrator was not an authentic piece of police gear, like it was a motorcycle helmet or a paintball helmet, something to that effect. And when I had the opportunity to discuss this with Tim Colville of Gumshoe Stories, he said that most likely all of the gear that is worn by the perpetrator is authentic police gear, except for the helmet. And then one thing that was very difficult to see in the early sharings of the video is that on the helmet there's also a headlamp, and it's just a detail that went unnoticed by many. But there's also an article from WKYC Studios from back in 2016, and that I wanted to point this one out because it said that there was a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and the conclusion of the story involving Missy Bevers. That was from 2016. That was since up to $50,000, and then it just keeps going. Goes to show you how there are a lot of there's a lot of change that happens with that in the last 6 years. And some other info from the last 12 months is that All Crime No Cattle did an 88-minute podcast about Missy Bevers that was released on December 29th of 2021. You can get this on iHeart.com. All Crime No Cattle, and their text says, Terry Missy Bevers was a 45-year-old fitness instructor and mother from Red Oak, Texas. On April 18th, 2016, Missy was found murdered at the Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas, just before an early morning workout session. Did Missy interrupt a burglary, or was she the target of an elaborate murder plot? Listen as they discuss the mysterious unsolved case and examine the true crime community's impact on the murder investigation. And a lot of people really are very passionate about this one, because during an episode of the Lord and Arts show, I heard something as to an explanation why, and that is that it occurred in a church, someone is wearing police gear, or maybe imitation police gear, and it's almost as if these are the pillars of the community that are supposed to keep people safe, yet this is the exact opposite of what happened. So it really is saddening, but, I'm going to go out on a limb and make a prediction that at some time within the next several years, there will be answers. I can't exactly say what, but maybe someone will be identified, a public person of interest. Maybe there will even be an arrest and conviction within the next several years. When I did my first episodes about Missy Bevers, as I said, those old black box recordings, Missy Bevers Hitman Theory, somebody wrote into the channel saying, dude, if you have any familiarity with law enforcement, then you'll know that they're going to make an arrest very soon. Well, it's been 6 years, been 5 years since those recordings, and we are still waiting. And that's where I will turn it over to you guys. If anyone has any new pieces of news that they would like to share in the comments section down below, you are welcome to do so. If anybody also has anything they want to say about Missy Bevers, anything respectfully, rest in peace, then that is also welcome. Absolutely anything. And this episode here is not about trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. It was more just about paying tribute to Missy Bevers and remembering that her case has gone unsolved. And I thank you so much for listening all the way to the end, and that will be all for me now. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, as well as BlackBoxNet88 on Instagram. And I will see you over there for the bonus podcast. Until next time.